But what they didn't know was that once a week, Clayton West was taking his boys over to Western Reserve Academy to practice on their big floor. He was running his boys through endurance cross-country training to condition them. And when Clayton West took his graduate classes on Saturday morning at Kent State University, he took his players with him so that they could play pickup games on the very floor where the sectional tournament would be held. Now, back in the league wars, the Bombers continued their inexorable march toward the title. They blasted Southeast 79-21, leading by 60 points at the end of the third quarter. In the final league game, they beat last year's nemesis Rootstown to win the league title. The boys barely paid any attention to it. West had them focused on the next game and then the next, and he refused to let anything go to their heads. Braceville went down 79-36, and one more win against Atwater meant that Windham High School finished the season at 18-0. And then the fun began. Over 1,500 people jammed Will's Gymnasium at Kent State University to get a look at these boys in their banana yellow uniforms in the opening conference win over the Hiram Huskies. Instead of relaxing before the next game, and I saw pictures of this game tonight in Don Sampson's scrapbook for the first time. They beat Hiram High School, and instead of relaxing before their next game, West loaded the boys onto a bus and took them over to Division A Howland High School to help Howland dedicate their new regulation-sized gym. West never passed up a chance to play on a big floor. Well, the Tigers came perilously close to ending that magical win streak, but Windham escaped with a 46-44 win. The very next night, the Bombers were back in action at the county tournament, and West conditioning paid off in a 72-33 win over Atwater to propel them into the finals against Rootstown. Now, West was confident. He even moved a JV player named Joel Harvey onto the roster and got him into the championships game. He played all 11 players that dressed for that game. He wanted them all to get experience on the big stage. And he threw a press on the Rovers, causing their two big men to foul out before the end of the third quarter. The result was never in doubt, 61-37. The 1952 Windham Bombers became the first PCL team in almost a decade to win both the regular season and the county tournament title. They were 23-0. And what West had been aiming for all year long had arrived, the climb through sectional, district, and regionals to the state tournament. No Portage County team had been to the state tournament except the 1932 Garrettsville team. Now, it was almost fated that Windham would draw Hartville, the very team that had knocked them out the year before. The game would be the first athletic contest played on Kent State's new floor. Will's Gymnasium was abandoned for the new Memorial Gymnasium, which is exactly the same arena that Kent State still plays on. Windham played the very first game on that floor. The Bombers went into their stifling press from the opening tip, scarcely giving the Blue Streaks time to breathe. And they did it with panache, fouling Hartville only 5 times during the game. Al Kinney had 17 points, Dodo Permowitz had 15, and the Bombers became the first Portage County team to make the sectional finals in over a decade. The next obstacle was Boston Local, which is today Nordonia High School, which had destroyed North Canton in their opener. They featured 3-time Summit County All-Star Ed Kovach at center. Kovach was averaging 27 points a game, and West knew just who he wanted to guard him. He told Dodo Permowitz to forget about scoring, to make sure that Kovach had a headache all game long. Permowitz did his job well. Kovach had only 1 basket the first half, only 4 in the second, and the Bombers waltzed to a 51-40 victory. They were now 25-0. They were the first Windham team to make it to the district tournament, and they were the only undefeated team in the state of Ohio. Obviously, the path was going to be tough. They drew Amherst High School, a completely unknown team. Amherst came from the west side of Cleveland. They'd only won 11 out of 19 games that season, but they were the smallest team in a league of huge schools, and almost every one of their wins had been against Class A teams. Now, the Comets weren't intimidated by an undefeated team that had a lead at halftime. All they did was unleash a kid named Lee Barthold, their towering ace shooter who sank 20 points in the second half. And whether it was nerves on the big stage or exhaustion, the Bombers lost their chance for immortality by making only 7 of 24 foul shots. That was the difference. Their undefeated season evaporated 60-47. 60 years later, it's not quite so painful to look back at that season, the way it ended, but rather to glory in what those boys accomplished. 25-1. Was that the greatest Bomber team of all time? Now, I'm not ready to say yet, but I marveled at how Clayton West prepared those boys for the rigors of life. Dodo Permowitz, I love that name. Dodo Permowitz went on to Georgetown University and became Dr. Stan Permowitz, a Navy physician for 41 years. Bill Cunningham went on to Ohio State University, became an industrial engineer. Larry McManus, after being drafted into the Navy, became an accountant with a career as the Vice President of Finance at Trumbull Memorial Hospital. And Al Kinney, after he recovered from that foot wound, Al Kinney taught high school here in Windham, taught science. Then he decided to become a professional musician. And today, Al Kinney is one of the most respected jazz and ragtime musicians in the country. And they're still friends. Clayton West couldn't ask for a better legacy than that. I think it's time to take a break. I got one more coach to talk about, but let's take a break.